Welcome to the Noona ARMY Podcast. I'm your host, Virginia Duan, also known as Mandarin Mama. This podcast is all about the particular challenges and aspects of being an older, middle-aged female BTS fan. Today, we will be talking about sex and BTS. I know it's very salacious, and it's actually probably not as exciting as you think it might be. But hopefully I can address some of the concerns and aspects of being a sexual person. And if you're asexual, then this might not be as interesting. And I just want to affirm that if you are not sexually attracted to BTS members, you're totally normal, it's okay, and you don't have to worry about it. If you are sexually attracted to BTS, then perhaps the question has occurred to you, is it okay for you to be sexually attracted to BTS? And whatever you identify with as, yes, it's okay to be sexually attracted to BTS. Is it okay to think about BTS in sexual situations? Yes, it's totally okay to think about BTS in sexual situations. And here's my reasoning behind this. One, they are all a legal consenting age in both the US and Korea, where they reside. I'm pretty sure that they hit the legal consenting age in pretty much any international country. I obviously cannot be 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that they do. Two, part of their entire selling strategy is sex appeal. And what is sex appeal but trying to, show their sexual fitness and their sexual desirability, whether it is in a softer form of little boyfriend pictures of them, looking all soft and cozy, or if it's an actual what's the term? Just a really sexy type of thing, like Bepse choreography or blood, sweat, and tears. And then, they have pictures in bed, for crying out loud. Their marketing is sexy. Now, with that said, I want to be very clear that consent is very, very important. Just because BTS members and their styling, I'm looking at you, fake love. I'm also looking at you, blood, sweat, and tears, satin pajamas. Just because their marketing and styling is sexy and pushes kind of a sexy agenda does not mean that we, as fans, are at all entitled to any BTS member in a sexual manner. We are not entitled to know anything about them sexually. We are not entitled to their sexual orientation or identities. We are not entitled to anything about them unless if they personally choose to give it to us personally. And as much as I would like that to happen, that's probably not going to happen. So consent is very important. And that whatever we talk about in this podcast, it is from the perspective of a fan. But we must also remember that BTS members are 7 individual people, sexual or otherwise, and it is none of our business what they do with their sex lives, with or without us, other people, the number of people, whatever. Okay, as long as whoever they're involved with are consenting adults. Okay, so I hope that disclaimer covers a lot of bases. Let's be decent people in the sense of respecting people's boundaries. Decency in terms of, what people like or dislike sexually, that's a different story. Also, before I forget, this is the Noona ARMY Podcast. So if you are under 18, this is not an appropriate subject for you to be listening. And you should ask your parents and have your parents listen to this with you, which I can't imagine you wanting to, if you decide to continue listening. All right, that seems enough disclaimers for this episode. I'm really not actually that uptight, but since I don't know who is listening, I think it behooves me to say such things. So I hope I covered that it's okay for you to want BTS members, find them sexually attractive, and want probably to sleep with them. I think that's a totally normal response, right? And also, I don't necessarily know if they want us to sleep with them, but if they do, that's their prerogative, right? The third reason why I'm actually not particularly pressed about seeing BTS members sexually is because historically, Asian Americans and Asian men in particular, American or otherwise, have been kind of emasculated emasculated. They are feminized and seen as like wussy or women-like, and several thoughts. Okay, one is that this feminization, this emasculation, comes from a very toxic gender binary structure, right? And also it comes from a very Western binary understanding of what masculinity and femininity is. Because, we all know that people are just people, right? There might be and depending on your society or culture, things may seem more masculine or feminine. So in that sense, it's just a construct, right? The second thing is that depicting Asians, and especially Asian men, as sexless or nerdy and just neutered people, it was on purpose. Okay. I don't know if you know very much about the history of America, but America is actually a pretty racist place. It was founded on racism. It was founded on taking advantage of the unpaid labor of, thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of enslaved Black people. It was founded on stealing land from the indigenous people. And it was founded just on a lot of horrible things. That doesn't mean the United States did not have good things, but that's the reality, okay? And so the first Asians were, I think, Filipinos who came to America, some of them trying to flee from the Spanish, I believe. So as you can see, America does not have the monopoly on exploiting people. A lot of this goes back to the 1800s, right after the Civil War. The great influx of Asians, particularly the Chinese. And I do apologize. I do not know as much about Filipino American history, so I will not be speaking to that. But please do know that Filipinos were the first Asians in the U.S. I just recently learned that, so I haven't explored that as much as I would like. So keeping that in mind, right after the Civil War, white landowners did not want to hire newly freed Black people. Why? Because racism. Let us confer that again, okay? So they did not want to hire Black people because they were very angry that they had to pay somebody for their labor. Imagine that. And then because of that, they wanted to build a railroad, and then there was the gold rush in California. And so instead of paying for labor, they decided, and by they I mean the white owners of these companies, decided that they would import their labor, and that they would rather ship people from another country, China, than pay wages to Black people. That's how deep racism goes in our country, friends. In my country. I guess you're not necessarily in the United States if you're listening. But that's how the Chinese came to America, because they wanted cheap labor, but they didn't want to pay Black people, and they didn't want to pay white people, because white people would have demanded higher wages. As a result of this, they did not want the Chinese to stay. And so there were very, very stringent immigration policies. Chinese people were not allowed to bring women, and maybe one or two, and then the rest were all men. And Chinese people obviously were sexual people and beings, and so that's how you get the stereotype that Asian women are either incredibly sexually demure or they're whores, because the only women probably that they could bring over were whores. or prostitutes. And this is, that's just what it was. There were lots of laws against what types of industry and businesses Chinese people could own or partake in. And as a result, they ended up taking up a lot of laundry, a lot of cooking ones, a lot of kind of stereotypically feminine occupations. Why? Because those are the only ones allowed to them. Because not only is America founded on racism, it is also founded on patriarchy. And, as long as you're not taking the job away from the white dude, I guess it's okay. And it was just part of this, right? We were called the Yellow Horde. Just so many awful jingoistic terms, but made to seem like we were foreign, exotic, and not just that, but like depraved. Don't get me started on the opium wars. But my point being that there was a pointed and concerted effort, propaganda, right, to otherize and make Asian men, in this case Chinese, and then it transferred to everybody, to like other Asians, is to make Asian men like women, to feminize them, to justify taking Asian women, to justify treating Asian men badly, and to justify keeping Chinese people, Asian people out of the United States. And then they passed the Chinese Exclusion Act because they were so upset that all these Chinese people came here and we built the railroads, right? Like we founded so many towns, but were burned out. And okay, anyway, you get the idea. But because of this history, it is particularly important to me as an Asian American that BTS is seen globally, but particularly in the US, as sexually viable men. And the fact that they are Asian bodies, Asian male bodies, that is so rare. And you might be saying, hey, what about Bruce Lee? Bruce Lee was in the 60s, okay? And he had to go back to Hong Kong to make movies before he was accepted in the United States, okay? And I'm not saying that there aren't exceptions to these rules, but it's always there are exceptions. Oh, look at Bruce Lee. Oh, look at all these martial artists. Oh, but there's no like regular dudes that are, it's so rare. It's so rare. The fact that there's such a huge gap between Bruce Lee and then like Crazy Rich Asians. That's like 50-year gap. 40 to 50-year gap. Okay. And again, I'm not saying there aren't like exceptions to the rule, but that's my problem, that there were exceptions. The fact that you could probably list every single Asian American hot male in cinema, certainly not music, for the last 5 decades tells you something, right? It tells you something. And so I am particularly pleased that my Asian children, I have 3 boys and a girl, that they will see Asian men put up as like sexy people. And is sexiness really the end all be all? No, I actually don't think so. But it is important, and we can't deny that. And do I think that we need approval from the majority to be visible? Do I think that we need approval from the society at large so that we are seen as valid? No, I don't think so. I don't think that at all, because Asian men were sexy before BTS. Asian men are sexy in the time of BTS, and Asian men will continue to be sexy after BTS. But it's still nice. It's nice to see people who look like me, people who look like my brother, people who look like my, family. It's nice to be seen. It's nice to be thought of as wanted. Okay. So lots of things to unpack. And this is probably not what you signed up for, for an ARMY podcast about BTS. But that's the factors at play. So I find it very, very important and almost revolutionary, particularly since they wear makeup, which is not a traditionally seen as masculine, which is ridiculous. And sometimes they play up their like Asian flower boy kind of like look, and are very pretty and soft. And then sometimes they can play up being incredibly, aggressive and, I guess, generically masculine, whatever that means, right? And so I just love how BTS and K-pop in general, I feel, is part of the conversation of widening and broadening what it means to be male, what it means to be Asian and male, and what it means to be masculine in society at large. So I find those things all very important. And yes, that we expand what it means to be sexy, and we expand what people find attractive. And why is all this talk about why are all these non-sexy things important to sex? Well, because we are formed by society at large, right? What we find attractive and sexy and desirable is formed by society. We can't help it. There's so much to deprogram and unpack. And I mean, that's why it's interesting to me. That's why it's important. Okay. Lecture over. Thank you. So going on to the next thing. Is reading fan fiction about BTS okay? And in particular, the 18 plus versions of fan fiction. And I would say yes. Yes, they are. Before getting into BTS, I was in a lot of different fandoms, but they also generated fan fiction, and I had no problem consuming them because they're fictional things, right? Fictional people, fictional stories and situations based on fictional people. But I had a real big problem with reading real person fanfic because I was like, hey, they're real people. That's kind of weird. And I was so judgy, super judgy. But like quietly judgy, not like actively judgy. I would never try to make you feel bad to your face. But, I got over it about a year in. I checked it out. And, to be fair, lots of times my main problem with fan fiction wasn't necessarily that it was based on actual people, but it was because it's really badly written. And I couldn't even make it through like Twilight or I'm going to offend a lot of people, but like I couldn't read Twilight. I couldn't read anything from 50 Shades. I couldn't even read like Diana Gabaldon's Outlander series. I can't. I'm sure they're great stories. I haven't even seen the movies. I'm sure they're great movies. If you like it, you're not a bad person. It's just not my thing. I don't enjoy that type of writing. But there's a lot of great writing in fan fiction. There are lots of writers and artists who are amazing at their craft and have written just beautiful stories that have made me like sob and weep, and it just changed how I saw things, changed how I viewed sex, changed how I understood BDSM, changed how I felt about lots of things. So that's the power of story. Now, again, I have to caveat that fan fiction is fiction, that they're not really about BTS. They're not really, first of all, alternate realities and alternate universes, those are not real, right? So I feel like fan fiction is just a way for fans to kind of process and interpret and put out their own fantasies about BTS, right? But again, BTS are actual people, and fan fiction is not reality. I don't know why I have to say this because it's obvious to me, but I would just like to remind people that is the case. Okay, so it doesn't matter what you read about BTS in a fan fiction, it's not true, okay? But yeah, I totally think it's fine. I think it's a great way for fans to, again, process and share their fantasies about otherwise unattainable people. And as long as it's done in a healthy manner where you do not cross the line between real and fake, or fantasy, I guess, then I don't see a problem. And then the last one is BTS and shipping. So I don't know what it is about fandoms, but fandoms love to ship people together, members together, whether it's in any universe, whether it's like Draco Malfoy and Harry, or Draco and Hermione, whatever. We have, BTS ships. I personally don't ship anybody together. I can read anybody paired with anybody in however many different configurations as possible. I'm very whatever, because I know it's fiction, and I know, and even if it weren't fiction, I'd be fine with it. I'm okay with that. But again, and do I think is it okay to ship? Sure. No one can control your thoughts. No one can tell you what to think or not think, and whether that's right or wrong. But again, to remember that just because we want to see and interpret events the way we want to, doesn't mean that is also reflective of an actual reality. So as long as you can separate the two, and that you're respectful of BTS members, you do whatever you want. I don't care. And as long as it doesn't violate or hurt BTS members, or anyone else for that matter, then ship whomever you want to your heart's content, okay? Whether that will make actual BTS members uncomfortable if you talk about it to them, I would personally find it weird if somebody was shipping me with someone who I was not with, or with someone who I consider like a family member. So, use common sense and use your discretion. One more thing before I forget. It is really transgressive for women to want things. It is the biggest pushback I get about being a middle-aged BTS fan is that people, and pushback both externally and internally, okay, is that people think, and I'm afraid that people will think that I'm too old and that it's creepy for me to want BTS and to think of BTS members sexually. And that is a really hard thing to get over, for many reasons, some of which are, it's not okay for women to want things. We are told constantly by society and patriarchy that what we should want is to get married, have children, and raise a family. Those are our wants. And then occasionally we're allowed to have a career and to want that. But to want things sexually, we're just whores, we're easy, we're just nymphomaniacs, we're just sluts. That's what we're told by society if we're women who want. And if we're older women who want, then we're perverts and like just worse things, right? We're predators, all those things. But really, we're just people, and we're human, and we have somewhere along the spectrum of the range of human desire. And part of that is sexual. So I think a lot of the times we feel so ashamed about liking BTS is because we don't want to be labeled, a predator, or we don't want to be labeled a cougar. We don't want to be labeled, just needy and pathetic. Because how needy and pathetic is it to lust after younger men? And the truth is, it is neither needy or pathetic. It just is. And it's totally fine for us to want BTS members sexually, because that, like I said earlier, is what they're trying to do. And again, as long as we don't harm people, we don't feel entitled to people, there's nothing wrong with it. And so what I hope to encourage you is there's nothing wrong with you. It's okay. And you're perfectly normal. And to remember that society, patriarchy, wants you to feel bad for wanting things. Because when you're a woman who wants, and when you're a woman who goes after what you want, you're dangerous. And then you start upsetting the status quo. And the status quo right now is still for men to be in power. So yes, everything goes back to like societal issues, because it's the world we live in. And that's it. That's my talk about sex and BTS. I guess I didn't really cover fantasies, but it should be obvious that it is fine for you to think whatever you want to think in your brain, as long as you know that it is not real. Okay. And that no matter what you think, no matter what you read, no matter what you've read, no matter what you see or think, we are not entitled to BTS. We are not entitled to BTS members. They are their own people, and they have their own agency, and consent is important. And it really pains me to have to keep saying that. But the reality of the situation is that some people do not know that boundary. And some people, not only towards BTS, but to people in general, don't respect that boundary. And thus we live in a world that is not very good to women and children. And of course, also to men. I bet you did not think this episode would turn out the way it did, huh? Thank you so much for listening. If you are watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. And if you're listening on a podcast, thank you so much for listening. And please subscribe also. And leave a rating. a good rating, please. And I've changed the format a bit to, I'm going to try and release on Mondays instead of Fridays. And I'm figuring it out as we go along, but hopefully we'll come to something soon. All right. So thank you so much and have a great day. Bye.